and welcome back to Campus Conversations, brought to you by the Alabama Independent School Association. I'm your host, Michael Shipma. I serve as the Marketing and Communications Director here at AISA. In this series, we dive into what it means to be a part of the AISA, including with interviews with experts in academics, accreditation, and athletics, all so that we can share these insights with our more than 90 member schools and counting across the entire state of Alabama and the 28,000 students that they serve. Every Friday, join us for new episodes featuring engaging and helpful discussions designed to help these students, their teachers, administrators, heads of school, be the absolute best that they can be. And today, we're talking to one of the AISA's Teachers of the Year in 2024, Holly Shaw. She teaches at Faith Academy and has a unique story about how she got into teaching, as well as great encouragement for current and perhaps some future teachers. I'm so excited for today's episode, so let's just jump right in. This is Campus Conversations. Every year, the AISA looks forward to honoring our hardworking teachers across the state through our Teacher of the Year awards. And these men and women deserve all the recognition that they can get and more, from today's ever-changing education landscape to technology and just everything in between. Teaching is not for the faint of heart. And joining us now is one of our Teachers of the Year from last school year to talk about her experience in the classroom. This is Holly Shaw, the AISA's Class AAA Secondary Teacher of the Year. Thank you so much, Holly, for being here.
Hey, yeah, I'm great. Glad to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for taking some time out, during a school day, no less. I really do appreciate it. First off, tell our listeners just a little bit about your background in teaching, kind of how many years you've been teaching, what exactly you teach, and just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Holly Shaw. This is my 10th year as an educator, ninth year at Faith Academy, which also happens to be my alma mater. I'm sure we'll get in that in a little bit. But I am a math teacher and a physics teacher. I started in middle school and I've kindly gradually worked my way up to be a junior math teacher and a 12th grade physics teacher. Um, I started when I was in college, I wanted to be an engineer, and I quickly realized that was not for me. I'm very much a people person. And I was always that kid in school that had liked to help everybody else when we were, preparing for tests and whatnot. So I felt like teaching was kind of a strong suit for me. I was a tutor in college, and so I kind of geared my life to be a teacher and loved it ever since.
So you talked a little bit about kind of what your inspiration was for being a teacher, just like helping others. I mean, on a day-to-day basis, I mean, that's your entire day. I mean, talk a little bit about what it's like to work with your students and specifically the age group that you're teaching with, secondary education. There's a lot to it. There's so many aspects to it. How rewarding is that to be able to work with those students?
Yeah, so when I changed my major to education, I always knew, assuming that Faith Academy would want me back, that I would go back to teach at Faith. I tell the kids all the time that Faith Academy changed my life, and they kind of look at me like I'm crazy. They're like, "Why was a school that big of a deal?" But of course, Faith being a Christian school, it saved my life because it's where I really met Jesus. And so that was something that when I became an educator, I wanted to use that as a platform for that. And so the teachers at Faith when I was in school were just so instrumental. And I went to six different schools for 6 different years before I landed at Faith Academy. And so it was a consistency. It was a place where I felt loved and supported and valued. And so for that to be given to me as a kid, I felt like I could give that back to other students. And so, especially in high school, when you're the end of high school, when you're trying to figure out what are you going to do next? Are you going to go to college? Are you going to go to the workforce? Are you going to join the military? And so just kind of being that support system, that cheerleader, and just being an advocate for them has been a really rewarding job.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a critical time of, I mean, anyone's life towards the end of high school. I mean, you're worried about ACT scores, you're worried about transfer, like so many different things that really have such a huge impact on kind of the direction for the rest of your life a little bit. No pressure out there to all you high school
Right.
students. Um,
Keeping in perspective for them that at the end of the day, yes, it's a big deal, but there's bigger things like eternity.
Well, and that's true. And what a great story to be able to go to school there and then be able to come back, teach, give back to a school that gave so much to you, like you just said. That's a neat story and one that we've heard, from across the ISA from different places, and it's really encouraging to see that. So tell me a little bit about your teaching philosophy. Kind of walk me through kind of how you structure your day, how you try and structure your school year a little bit? What are some of those things that you feel really make your classroom work, I guess?
Yeah, so I think it's changed, of course. So I mean, I haven't been teaching forever, but 10 years is a decent amount of time.
For
And I
sure.
will say that as I've grown as a teacher, my priorities have changed just a little bit. So yes, math is super important because it's foundational and they're going to have to need it for the next year. And especially if they want to go to college, I definitely want my kids to be prepared. But I also, our vision as a school is to develop them into people that are going to be productive members of society one day. And we want to address their social needs, their, academic needs, and all those things. And so I definitely want to teach them the content, and it's going to be a priority. My kids know that we're going to learn, like that's not an option. However, I want them to feel like they can talk to me about things and that I am a resource to them outside of just math. And so I'm very relational. I like to joke with them. I like to have a good time, but I also know that my kids know like she does mean business when it's time to switch. And so finding that balance has been a journey of figuring out how do be relational but also be serious. And so it's just been a learning curve that throughout the year I feel like I've tweaked it every year to be what it is now.
Yeah. Would you say that's probably your biggest challenge, I guess, as far as trying to connect with the students in a way? Because, like you said, 10 years, I mean, maybe in the grand scheme of things, might not sound like a whole long time, but man, education now versus education 10 years ago, I mean, many teachers would agree that there's so many things that have changed.
Yeah, the
Would you say that's the
personality.
most challenging thing?
Yeah, I would for sure because the kids are different. Like there's never going to be a group of students that are going to be exactly the same. And so each year you go in, thinking you have a certain expectation, and most of the time the kids completely blow it out of the water because they're not what you expected, or maybe they are in some ways, but not in others. And just parenting is different. What our parents, how they raised us is not going to be the same as you're raising children now because the world's just different. You have social media
Hmm.
and we went through a pandemic and that changed, the way that kids socialize and stuff. And so you're always having to be flexible as a teacher. If you're not flexible as a teacher, you're probably going to be miserable because you're
Hmm.
not able to, adjust to the students that you have that year.
Hmm. When you talk about making this kind of a positive and kind of an inclusive environment for your students, and you said yourself, you brought up social media, which is such a challenge for so many teachers across the state. I mean, how do you kind of manage it? I don't personally know Faith Academy's cell phone policy, but so many schools across the state, both public and private, are saying, either leave it at home, lock it up in your locker, put it in a
Yeah.
pouch. When you see kind of the use of social media, and I guess just cell phone usage, period, kind of come down, in your experience, what does that do for the student's ability to learn once
Yeah.
kind of the phones kind of take a little bit of a back seat?
So even when I was at Faith, we've always had a pretty strict cell phone policy. It was never allowed to be out during the school day. So when I was in school, I left it in my car once I started driving. But for our kids, they do have that access to yonder pouches, so they don't have access to it throughout the day. And it's actually most kids, especially our kids that will transfer in and they were at a school where maybe they didn't have that, cell phone policy, they find it actually very refreshing. They feel like they can relax, they feel like they can focus. There's no fear of somebody recording them or, posting something throughout the day. So of course, after school, there's going to be social media issues like, where people are being unkind or whatever. But during the actual school day, it's really not an issue at Faith, which I'm
Hmm.
so thankful for. And so we get to try to encourage them, that, you get to talk to each other. Like lunchtime, they're socializing with each other. They're not sitting on their cell phones checking, Instagram or whatnot. And so I think we've done a really good job at Faith of encouraging our students to be present and not be distracted by social media and their phones.
Would you say that that is I mean, in your opinion, your personal experience, would you suggest that having those pouches or just some sort of a policy to keep cell phones out of student hands during the school day. Would you say that that's something that you would think would be a good idea for pretty much any school anywhere
Absolutely. Yeah,
to
when I
adopt?
first started at Faith, we didn't have the pouches. So the procedure was just that it had to be turned off and out of sight and you could not access it. So of course you had your kids that were going to be rule followers no matter what, and they did the policy. But then you had those a few that would, keep it on silent, and they would try to,
Hmm.
access it in the bathroom or, underneath their desk or whatnot. And yonder pouches have really kind of just leveled up a little bit. You're still going to have kids that want to get around the rules, and that's just life. That's students. They're kids. They're going to make mistakes.
Hmm.
But it's definitely cut down on it. And I would say the vast majority of our school abides by the rule, and it's not really an issue.
Hmm. Well, there are so many students that you've had to teach over the years, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but a lot of these students, there's very few of them that are very similar or are exactly the same, whether that's personality, their approach to learning, and that can be a real challenge for someone like you with all the students, dozens of students that you teach on any given school year, and any teacher in general. Talk a little bit about how maybe you kind of bridge that gap with maybe some of the individual needs, meeting the student with where they are and their respective learning ability. How do you kind of approach that?
Yeah, well, you're gonna have kids that you gravitate towards, that they're more like you, and you can get them to get their personality more easily. So it takes intentionality of seeking out those students, seeking out what they like, seeking out what interests them, and showing them that yeah, we may not be the same, and we may not understand life the same way, but I value you. You're a child of God. I want to know you. I want to support you. Communicate with me. Let's work on this together because it's a team effort when it comes to teaching and learning. One person can't do it all. The teacher has their part, the student has their part, and of course the parents do as well. But just knowing that you're there for them regardless of where they come from, what they believe, how they learn, and just knowing that you're kind of all on the same team working for them to be successful, and getting that buy-in from the students. If the student doesn't think that you care, they're not going to care.
Hmm. Let's talk about this award that you won last year, because that's pretty neat. I mean, it's gotta feel pretty good to get, a pat on the back, kind of like, for being named Teacher of the Year. I mean, that's something that you can take with you for the rest of your life. And we're of course so proud of you and all the other Teachers of the Year and all of our teachers across the state. Talk a little bit about kind of how you found out about the award and what it meant for you in that moment and still today to receive that recognition.
So it's kind of a somewhat of a funny story. The two SGA sponsors last year, they're pretty good friends of mine, but they were like, "We're going to get her flowers. We're going to do this announcement at lunch." They had this whole big like thing prepared, and my sweet precious headmaster came in. He's like, "Hey, did you tell her?" And they both just kind of looked at him and they were like, "We want to hurt you, sir." And so of course they had to tell me. Because I was completely and totally confused. I was like, "Okay, somebody better start talking." And so they were able to tell me, and I was very humbled and honored. I definitely thought and still do like there has to be better options, but I was definitely appreciative and felt very loved.
Oh, well, it's much deserved. And still, like you said, you've been in the classroom for about 10 years now, and still have a journey ahead of you as far as teaching goes. How do you plan on continuing to learn and grow and develop as a teacher? Because it's certainly not a static profession. As you said earlier, it's constantly changing. Everything's new every year. Kind of what's your outlook for the future right now?
So I'm actually the crazy person that's going to grad school right now while teaching full time. And so I'm
Wow.
getting my instructional
Kudos.
leadership degree, so that hopefully one day I can do some administrative work and still be in the kids' life, just taking a different role in the school.
We'll talk a little bit about how you balance that. I mean, going to grad school is no joke.
Yeah.
I mean, just any degree is no joke. And then on top of that, the full time and emphasis on full time job that is teaching. I mean, how do you do that?
Definitely time management. So I'm practicing what I preach to my kids, of course. I do have, a dual enrollment class, so I kind of get to help my kids do their college class while I do my college class. But honestly, I tell people that I think it's actually better that I waited to do grad school because I do have the experience that has helped me do my classes. But I'm doing it in small chunks, so nothing crazy.
Hmm.
I do one class like every 6 to 8 weeks. And so it's
Hmm.
been manageable. A lot of time spent outside of the classroom, of course, at home doing my online class, but I'm halfway there. I'll be done next December.
Well, I'll go ahead and just get ahead of the game and just say congratulations on your degree that I am sure that you will earn with flying colors, and we're so proud of that. Are there any sort of like resources or communities that in your experience have really kind of helped you kind of grow as a teacher and really just kind of stay the course with everything that you have going on? What's been really helpful for you?
So our school is very much helpful in getting us professional development. We every year we are assigned a certain number of hours that we're supposed to get, but they also provide us opportunities. I've never had to really look very far to find opportunities to grow, and every year we do teacher in service at the beginning of the year, and so I'm always being kept up to date with like the newest trends, which is appreciative because sometimes when we're in our daily grind of our classroom, we don't really get the opportunity to just go learn a lot. And they do a really good job of telling us, like, hey, this is a new thing. Like last year, we had our whole AI training, of course. And so that's been very a great positive thing about our administration.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll go ahead and drop the shameless plug here for the AISA. If you go to our website, aisaonline.org, at the top of the page, you'll see events drop down list, and you'll see professional development events that we have for across the state. So any of our teachers listening who are looking for those PD opportunities to fill out those hours, definitely take a look at that. Lots of great stuff coming up, including things about AI. So definitely check that out. But what changes maybe, and I guess this is kind of just a very general overall question, but kind of what changes would you like to see in the education system, maybe in as a whole, if there is anything that you can think of where like, man, I wish maybe just overall, generally speaking, if we could do this better, it
Yeah.
really could serve the students. Do you have any ideas or any thoughts kind of about that?
Yeah, so I think actually Faith has done a pretty good job at making a positive change. I feel like when I was in school, college was the biggest deal, right? Everybody has to go to college if you want to be successful, if you want to make good money, you go to college, and that's just not realistic for all students. And so we're in our third year now at Faith of having a co-op program. And there's different tracks. And of course, you have like a medical track and a law track and an education track that's going to lead you to college. And it's just going to prepare you get you ahead of the game. But we have a trade track, which I think is absolutely phenomenal because you do have these students that are hard workers they just think differently. They like to work with their hands. And so we're giving them certifications and job site experience. So when they leave Faith, they can go in the workforce and not be so far behind and having to work, these, jobs that maybe aren't as glamorous. They can actually go in at a pretty even playing field with some of these other people that have years of experience. And just encouraging students that yes, high school is necessary. Yes, you're going to learn skills that are academic and social, but that life after high school is not always going to look the same for every student. And I think
Mhm.
that's
No, that's a fantastic point. I think a lot of people nowadays are really starting to open up to the idea of maybe, perhaps, college is not the best move for me. Perhaps there is some other skill, trade, or perhaps going the community college route. There are so many different options, and I love that you pointed that out because that is really important for people to know that they pursue their passions, they find what they enjoy, find, what's productive, and really go forward with whatever that route looks like. Um, One another thing I really wanted to kind of briefly touch on was for somebody that has been in the game, like I said, for a decade doing this, uh, one issue that the entire state, and I mean, really indeed everywhere is facing is just a shortage of teachers, man. There's a lot of folks that really might be interested in teaching, but are perhaps hesitant given the current landscape. What advice or what encouragement would you give to anyone who is either on the track to becoming a teacher, considering it? Maybe they're not certified just yet, but they might want to be. What would you tell them to kind of encourage them to kind of give them that little push to be like, hey, this is a rewarding career, and this is something that really makes a positive impact in so many lives.
Yeah, I would definitely tell them not to forget their why and define their why early on. Because if your why is about you and what you can get and, your financial compensation and all that stuff, you're probably going to crash and burn. And I say that because I constantly remind myself because there's days where you're in the trenches and you're like, why am I doing this? And if you don't have a clear definition of that why, you're going to get lost and you're going to get burnt out and you're going to want to run and tuck tail and go find something that you feel like is more rewarding. And so my why has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with the kids. Yes, I teach math, but that's just simply a door that the Lord has given me so that I can share Him with the next generation and support them and help them be all that they can be. And so if I hate to say that, because if you're looking at yourself the whole time and you're thinking about what is in it for me, you're probably are going to leave the profession, or you're not going to, find it as rewarding. And because I focus on them, yes, I get stuff in return. So yes, I'm not saying that you're not going to, think about yourself as well, but it's a byproduct. By serving the students, by serving the community, I get the reward, but it's not really about me, if that makes sense.
That internal job satisfaction is really important. Wow, Holly, I mean, you can really see, and I know our listeners are going to agree with me when I say this, you can really see why you were selected as one of our teachers of the year last year. I mean, fantastic to hear about the work that you're doing, and the impact that you're making on students' lives, both, with their education, spiritually, everything in between. It's really encouraging to see teachers like yourself and so many other teachers, like I said before, across the entire state of Alabama and the AISA doing the work that they're doing. So, Holly Shaw, uh, Faith Academy, thank you so much for coming on our podcast today. I really do appreciate it. This was a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy day to speak with me. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, for sure.
How great is it to hear directly from some of our teachers, and all of us here at AISA are so proud and frankly honored to be working alongside people like Holly and all of our teachers across the state. I also want to briefly call out our other teachers of the year for 2024. Those are for Class A Elementary, Carla Owen from Pickens Academy, Class AA Elementary, Rachel McCurdy from Lowndes Academy, Class AAA Elementary, Kristen Spigner from Pike Liberal Arts School, Class A Secondary, Murphy Wood, Springwood School, Class AA Secondary, Joe Timmons, Summiton Christian School, and Class AAA Secondary is, of course, Holly Shaw, who we just spoke to. As I mentioned before, if you're a teacher looking for professional development opportunities, we have so many options to choose from. Just go to our website, aisaonline.org, and click on the Events tab. There's a drop-down list where you'll see professional development. Go check it out. And also, don't forget, of course, about new episodes of Campus Conversations every Friday, wherever you get your podcasts, along with the video version of this episode on our YouTube page. But for now, I'm your host, Michael Shipma. Thanks for listening.